Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome, Megan. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Cool. Welcome to the Tuesday afternoon.
Wednesday.
The Wednesday afternoon addiction homework planner live video. So, Megan, you wanted to discuss. Okay, wait. Let me do all the introductions first to get that all out the way. So, we're broadcasting on the MyRehab helper profile, the ARC Facebook page, the Duly Diagnosed YouTube channel, and those are the three public channels that we're broadcasting on. We're going to be broadcasting for 10 to 20 minutes on those channels before we switch over exclusively to the MyRehab Cafe private and unswitchable Facebook group, which I'm going to post a video to give you some more information on what that's all about if you aren't part of that. And then the workshop's going to see its way through to the end of the 50 minutes or however long it takes on that channel. And if you're watching on that channel and you want a higher degree of anonymity or confidentiality, please don't jump on until we've moved over exclusively to that channel. And if you do want to hop on and you're on a public channel or on the MyRehab Cafe channel, please check for the link in the comments. You can click that. You can hop on. You can participate via video and audio or audio only. Or you can post a comment and we'll hopefully see it and we can bring it up. And if you've got a question, we'll discuss it and so on. So I think I've covered everything on that front. Let's put that banner up. Put my phone on silent. So yeah, Megan, so thank you for joining us. We're going to be discussing personality. Originally we wanted to discuss people pleasing, right?
Right, yeah.
I went on and I was looking for videos that could explain that and that we could have a conversation around. And it came up with Jordan Peterson's stuff on the different personality traits, the big 5 personality model or whatever it's called, which he's obviously he knows a hell of a lot about. And I found this video in our sort of 10 minutes before we discussed that we were going to just go through the video and then use that as a reference point and have a conversation around that, see? Because it ties in,
yeah.
Well, being agreeable ties in with the people-pleasing thing, which is what we were going to discuss. So let me share that. Oh, sorry, no, we were going to give it an explanation first, right?
Yeah, well, I think play the video and then we can kind of explain after that
Right.
what the context of the video is.
All right. Okay, let's do that. Cool.
Okay.
Share it. Hey, D'Angelo.
Hi.
How's it,
Hi,
man?
D'Angelo.
Hello, Megan.
Okay. I don't know
Good
what
to have you.
I don't know what language the subtitles are, but let's see. So the topic of the video it's titled "The Dangers of Being Too Agreeable." So let's hear what he has to say on that.
Forming graduate students. And one of the things that was really awful about that was that it was really hard on the high performing graduate students, because they felt that even being in the same category as the people who weren't working hard and pulling their weight devalued what they were doing, and that's exactly right. And so this is also why there's a conscientiousness trait and an agreeableness trait, because conscientious people judge you on your accomplishments, right? They don't give a damn about your feelings, not a bit. It's like, are you doing the work or not? Whereas agreeable people think, well, your mother's sick and you've got a bunch of family problems and we all have to take care of each other, and it's no wonder that you're having a rough time. And like, you can't say that one of those attitudes is correct and the other isn't correct. You can't say that. There wouldn't be those two dimensions if there wasn't something correct about both of them. But you can certainly point out that often they conflict, and so the demand for inclusiveness and unity and care and the demand for high-level performance in a hierarchical structure, they're very different orientations in the world. And so it's complicated for people who are agreeable and conscientious. And actually, I think often large corporations and large institutions of any sort run on the unheralded labor of people who are high in agreeableness and high in conscientiousness, and they're disproportionately women. My experience in large institutions has been that if you want to hire someone to exploit appropriately, no, not appropriately, if you want to hire someone to exploit productively, you hire middle-aged women who are hyper-conscientious and who are agreeable, because they'll do everything. They won't take credit for it, and they won't complain. And that's nasty, and I think that happens all the time. And so one of the things you have to be careful of if you're agreeable is not to be exploited, because you'll line up to be exploited. And I think the reason for that is because you're wired to be exploited by infants. And so that just doesn't work so well in that actual world. And one of the things that happens very often in psychotherapy, people come to psychotherapy for multiple reasons, but one of them is they often come because they're too agreeable. And so what they get is so-called assertiveness training, although it's not exactly assertiveness that's being trained. What it is the ability to learn how to negotiate on your own behalf. And one of the things I tell agreeable people, especially if they're conscientious, is say what you think. Tell the truth about what you think. There's going to be things you think that you think are nasty and harsh, and they probably are nasty and harsh, but they're also probably true. And you need to bring those up to the forefront and deliver the message. And it's not straightforward at all, because agreeable people do not like conflict. Not at all. They smooth the water. And you can see why that is in accordance with the hypothesis that I've been putting forward. You don't want conflict around infants. It's too damn dangerous. You don't want fights to break out. You don't want anything to disturb the relative peace. And if you're also more prone to being hurt physically and perhaps emotionally, you're also maybe loath to engage in the kind of high intensity conflict that will solve problems in the short term, because it takes a lot of conflict to solve problems in the short term. And if that can spiral up to where it's dangerous, which it can if it gets uncontrolled, it might be safer in the short term to keep the water smooth and to not delve into those situations where conflict emerges. The problem with that is it's not a very good medium to long-term strategy, right? Because lots of times there are things you have to talk about because they're not going to go away. And so partly what you do with agreeable people is you get them to figure out, and they have a hard time with this too. If you ask a disagreeable person what he wants, say, or she wants, they'll tell you right away. They know. It's like, this is what I want, and this is how I'm going to get it. But agreeable people, especially if they're really agreeable, are so agreeable that they often don't even know what they want, because they're so accustomed to living for other people and to finding out what other people want and to trying to make them comfortable and so forth, that it's harder for them to find a sense of their own desires as they move through life. And that's not, look, there's situations where that's advantageous, but it's certainly not advantageous if you're going to try to forge yourself a career. That just doesn't work at all. So, all right.
Okay, listen, that's not all the guy has to say on that. He's got a lot more to say on it, but let's look at okay. So just for context, everybody that's watching, right? So the Big Five personality trait model is composed of 5 different traits, okay? This is actually not a good one. I couldn't find really well, let me just read the notes that I've got here from. So, okay, so it's made up of agreeableness, which is made up of 2 subdomains, which is compassion and politeness. Okay, so if you're high in compassion and you're very polite, it's likely that you're high in agreeableness. You okay?
What is that?
I think it was D'Angelo's mic or something. So if you're high in agreeableness, you're going to be compassionate and you're going to be polite. Conscientiousness, that's made up of industriousness and orderliness. Okay, so that means like industriousness means sort of like hard working. I'm going to mute your mic, Angelo, for the moment. See?
No problem.
So industriousness means like hardworking, dutiful, like those kinds of things. So you'll work your ass off if you are conscientious a conscientious person, especially an industrious person. Orderliness, that's obviously, I mean, self-explanatory. So that's like my wife's very high in orderliness. So she likes everything in its place. It's got to be all in order. If you're late, it's a problem for her. Like you got to be on time. So she's very high in orderliness in that trait. Extroversion, enthusiasm, and assertiveness. So extroversion is you sort of enjoy social situations. So extroverted people sort of gain energy from social interactions. People low in extroversion kind of lose energy from it. So they aren't enthusiastic and assertive necessarily if you're low on that scale. Neuroticism, withdrawal and volatility. So I don't have off the top of my head an explanation for that, but like volatility is like you kind of like irritable and like a moody person kind of. I think that sort of falls in line with that. Openness to experience, which is made up of openness and intellect. So that's I think that's self-explanatory as well. But that's so that the openness to experience. So generally, you're very sort of like arty people, right? Or the people that at least are high in that. So they play instruments. They might be artists. They enjoy poetry. They like reading. They like abstract ideas, things like that. So, Megan, was that a sufficient explanation for all of that?
Yeah, definitely. I have a question for you, if that's all right, Ryan.
Yeah.
Can a person be agreeable and conscientious? Because those are the two that he's referring to. Can those two traits exist together? Can they be high in both of them?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's what he said. What he said was, okay, so you heard him talking about infants and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of other stuff that he had to say about it, but he refers to, so he says that the statistics show or the research shows that women are generally speaking more agreeable than men. Okay. So if you had to guess whether a particular woman was high in agreeableness, you'd be right 60% of the time. Okay, that's the statistic, right? And that he sort of, the angle he comes from with that is like almost like from an evolutionary like biology kind of like perspective. Okay, in that since all of mankind, women have had to be agreeable and nurture infants and as you said, and that sort of is they've had to be agreeable, because I mean, if you think about it, right? If an infant, like a 4-month-old infant, starts crying at 3:00 in the morning, you've got to get up and go and feed the thing and check what's wrong with it and the child. I'm a disagreeable person, by the way, so I'm gonna say stupid. So, but that's what's gonna happen. You've got to be agreeable. You can't be sort of like, I'm not gonna care about this child. You've got to be high in compassion.
That's nurturing. You're nurturing, in other words, as well. Okay.
Yeah. So, and you asked the question, can that exist simultaneously with any of the other traits? So yeah, so you can be high in all of the traits, or you can be low in some of them and high in others. But like you said, with in corporate environments, what happens is, generally speaking, and he said it exactly, if you're in a corporate environment and you want somebody to exploit, what was the word that he used? Efficiently, I think. I don't think it was efficiently, but to exploit efficiently, right? So you want somebody to work hard for the company. You want them to be relatively agreeable and high in conscientiousness. So they're going to be hardworking and they're going to do whatever you tell them without arguing with you, and they're going to work hard all the time, right? So that is the sort of, that's almost in a nutshell what people pleasing. You could say that person is a people pleaser. So I'm sure the audience might know A lot of might have friends or family members or whatever that they would consider people pleasers, right? And if they're a people pleaser, then it's likely that they are highly agreeable at the very least, right? So very compassionate and very polite, right? So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just watching that short snippet, there was a lot of things that came up for me, such as assertiveness. Without having to say the word, I picked up on things like boundaries with people that are perhaps too agreeable, compassion, and it's quite an interesting topic because one could really talk of the different perspectives of this kind of topic. So for example, a question I would have is is a person high in compassion typically then a people pleaser, or is a person high in compassion still strong in assertiveness? You see, so I think it's like interesting what you could discuss here.
Well, assertiveness, you've got to be careful about how we define that, right? In the context of this, let me explain what he says here. Very assertive people are take charge types. They put their own opinions forward uncommonly strongly and tend to dominate and control social situations. Very assertive people can be strikingly influential and captivating. They have a communication style that is often associated with leadership. This is good when they are knowledgeable, competent, and able, but not so good when they aren't. Assertive people are people of action. They don't wait for others to lead the way, but lead in heedlessly. They can be impulsive, inconsequent, and act without thinking. Okay, so you've got to remember that this is different from somebody being low in agreeableness.
Okay.
So because you're high in assertiveness, it doesn't mean so. If you're high in agreeableness and you're relatively high in assertiveness, it doesn't mean that it balances the scales out and it makes you less of an agreeable person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the assertiveness is kind of like the way I see it is it's like somebody that's very charismatic, if I can put it that way. So you get like I'm sure you would know possibly some like Raymer, that pastor dude. What's his name? Well, there's a bunch of them, but they're like very charismatic and outspoken.
Like TD Jakes as well.
Yeah, sure, but they're also probably high in compassion. They're probably highly compassionate people as well. So it doesn't make them disagreeable. So if you're disagreeable, you're likely to negotiate on your own behalf. Okay. There's another video that I actually watched earlier. If you're disagreeable, you're very likely to negotiate on your own behalf and not on the behalf of others. Whereas if you're agreeable, at worst case, you'd want an outcome that's like a 50-50 sort of scenario. But while you're going through the thing, you're going to sort of help the person along and you're gonna sacrifice some of your own needs so that they can get what they want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, which is actually then sacrificing your own needs and prioritizing the needs and wants and feelings of others at the expense of oneself is actually the definition then of people pleasing. If you're taking it into that branch, that branch of context.
But being assertive doesn't change that, see? If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I get it. How you're explaining it in this context, because obviously people that have an issue with people pleasing, they learn boundaries and they learn assertiveness, and they learn all that kind of thing to kind of exit the people pleasing situations that they find themselves in. Like they learn how to say no and they learn how to prioritize their needs and they learn how to communicate or express themselves in a way that's not at the expense of themselves, basically.
So in the video, there's a part where he says often he finds patients coming into his clinical practice, and they're very highly agreeable people, and he goes through a process of what he called assertiveness training, and then he stopped and he said, okay, but assertive isn't the right word. It's more about teaching them how to negotiate on their own behalf. So the word assertive, we've got to be careful how we use it here, because you can use it interchangeably for, the way that I described it, as well as kind of like, if you think of somebody that's assertive in the sort of like common sort of way we think of assertiveness, it's like somebody that asserts their point. Okay.
Yeah.
The thing with a disagreeable person is so a highly agreeable person can assert their point, their position. Okay. But if they're interacting with somebody that's highly disagreeable, the highly disagreeable person is going to steamroll them. Okay. So does that make sense? So they can assert it, but it doesn't mean that they're going to get their way necessarily all of the time. So that's what he's saying. He's saying it's you teaching the person to be more disagreeable than they are agreeable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Look, in the context of people pleasing, Megan, do you want to tell us what are your sort of how have you conceptualized people pleasing, or what do you know about that?
Okay, so yeah, well, like I mentioned, people pleasing would be prioritizing the needs, feelings of others at the expense of oneself. So, constantly putting other people's needs and wants before my own, for example, at the expense of myself. And there are many, many reasons as to where people pleasing can stem from, that need for validation. And it's a journey that one goes on with themselves to kind of, establish where that need for the people pleasing, birthed within them. So, yeah, definitely a very interesting topic, people pleasing and the insecure attachments, if you will, that can stem from people pleasing, with others.
Yeah. What?
So
yeah.
No, so that's why I say, watching the video, it does bring up, whether a person, completely understands the context of the video or not, it still, it does bring up other subcategories that are very interesting and very worth, journeying with. And yeah. And
the problem
prompting.
with this guy, Megan, is he goes into every nook and cranny of something when he gets busy. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's quite and you're right, it does. It brings up all sorts of other questions and so on. I want to ask you something though. Do you think that when women have children, because I've just noticed something about women that have children versus women that don't have children, right? And I'm generalizing here, hey, so like forgive me for doing that, please, but I'm generalizing. So a lot of women that once they've had a child, I see they come across less agreeable to me. Okay, it's almost like something's changed, and they've like almost become less naive. And listen, hear me out, right? Taking care of an infant is like it's like one of the most hardcore jobs that I've witnessed anybody have to do, right? It's like 24/7. It's brutal. Okay, the sleeplessness, it's rough, right? So that kind of opens a person's eyes, if that makes sense. What do you have to say on that? On that note, do you think I'm onto something, or am I just sort of barking up the wrong tree?
No, give us an example. Give us a practical example of an experience that you've encountered.
Well, I live with my wife, and she's had 2 children. Well, we both raising 2 children. And
So when you say it becomes less agreeable, if I heard you correctly?
yes, yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
Well,
I mean,
not less like it's almost like it's not. I'm not saying that she's less compassionate since she's had children. I mean, she's had to use whatever compassion it is that exists within her to raise these kids, right?
yeah.
But she's also had to not let them get what they want at every turn, for example. Okay. So yeah, an infant might have to get everything at once for the first, I don't know what is it, 18 months of their life? Okay.
Yeah, well,
Then
you're molding them. They're molding and they're shaping and they're forming.
yeah, and you gotta cater to its every need because it can't look after itself, right? And that's just a brutal process. I don't think a lot of people really realize how brutal that process is before they experience it. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is I think she's become almost like less naive in a way since she's had children as well, because she's been exposed to such a hectic process. And now that the kids are getting a bit older, she's obviously now has to assert, not be assertive, but be less agreeable, especially with them. I don't know if you've ever heard a mom screaming at their kids to brush their teeth, right? Like you can hear it 3 houses away. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like that's a different kind of behavior that one exhibits when they don't have children. What do you think?
You know, so I'll speak from my experiences as a mom, and from like the other journeys that I've seen in motherhood. And you're right, Ryan. It's a different ball game when a woman has children. I mean, there's a resilience that comes up that for myself, I never even would have imagined existed within myself, because suddenly you have this little person that is fully dependent on you, and it's now up to you to give this little person to take care of all their needs. And suddenly it becomes less about you and all about this little person, and ultimately what you're doing. And this applies to both parents, if both parents are present, or whatever the dynamic is in the household. Sometimes it's single dads, so essentially you that little person is molding and shaping and forming, and they are developing what Erik Erikson refers to as the trust versus mistrust stage of their lives. And so that is when they really bond and they really connect to you. And I think that as a parent, you don't take that lightly, how this little person is really bonding and attaching to you. And I think that with that in mind, and with that huge responsibility and privilege and all of that comes with it, one realizes this is serious business. Like I've got to know what I'm doing here. In terms of I've got to know I'm doing the right thing for the child. I've got to know that I'm doing the responsible thing for the child. And like I say, it becomes about complete nurturing of that child. And so ultimately you are shaping that child. You are with them while their perceptions and experiences and all of that are forming, and so of course it's things change for a person when they become a mother or a parent.
So well, my old man was like, listen, off you go, 19 or however old I was, like, here's your bags and your mattress and get out my house and don't come back. Go and sort yourself out, right? So, and I'm speaking in hyperbolic terms here, but so yeah, he picked me up, but from my mom's side, there was a lot more compassion. It's like, can't kick him out the house. He's still, you know what I mean? Like, and I can see that with Taryn as well. She's like, it's when that nurturing, compassionate sort of trait if you apply it in every context, in every situation, let's say the child grows up and he's 18 years old and he's got to go out into the world and study or fall on his face and get hurt and learn from his experiences out in the world, right? An over nurturing mother or father, for that matter, can rob the person of those valuable experiences, right?
Yeah, I mean, you do get the cases where too much protection over a child that needs to go and learn life experiences can be detrimental. And also if you have a family system where, for example, like the mom is over nurturing and the father is not, or the other way around, or whatever, it can form that whole dynamic of triangulation where the child goes to one parent that says no and then to the other parent that says yes, and then suddenly the family system is no longer on the same page, working like harmoniously. You kind of, it creates opportunities to play one parent up against the other if one is too compassionate but the parents are not communicating and on the same page throughout the journey.
Well, that's my concern with my kids in particular. Like one of the scariest thoughts that I have is that I'm not going to be around to see them sort of like grow up, right? Like anything can happen, that their life is rough, right? And my biggest concern is that there isn't somebody there to let them. This happened the other day. This is crazy, actually. So like out of the personality test, and I score very high, low in agreeableness. I'm a very apparently disagreeable person, right? So we're sitting outside and my son's like, oh, he wants to go and fetch his boots from down the road that he left down the road on, we'd say in a complex, so it's relatively safe. So let him do that. But I've never let him do that before. Like get on his bike and just bugger off down the road and sort of disappear into the horizon, right? So I stressed way more than Taryn did. Hey, she was like pretty comfortable with it. But I stressed about it. But the point that I'm trying to make is, what happened was, he did fall, and he did fall literally on his face, and came running back with like this bruise and these scratches, and he went out and he had that experience and he learned a couple of things from it, right? And I think it's important. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's limits as parents. There's a line that needs to be drawn that keeps it healthy, so to speak. And I think it's also important to consider around that there are times where how we were raised as children can affect the way or influence the way that we parent our children, right? And so sometimes we could carry on a pattern that was part of our parents. We can carry on a pattern, or we could go the opposite way, or we could break the pattern. For example, if you were born into an abusive household, you could, as a parent, carry that through and be an abusive parent yourself, or you could be a very sensitive parent who is fearful of disciplining your child because of your experiences. Or you could be, a clingy parent. There's just so many different scenarios that could stem from one's own childhood, and so it's always valuable to when you are yourself a parent, to also journey with yourself on that parenting journey as to what are your ideas of parenting and what are your values and morals of parenting and stuff like that. Journeys are invaluable.
Cool. Sorry,
Yeah.
thanks, Megan. Okay, so just if you could hold that thought as well. So to everybody on our public channels, if you want to know what any of this has to do with people pleasing, you're going to have to follow us through to the MyRehab Cafe. And if you want to find out how to join the MyRehab Cafe, you can go to www.myrehabcafe.com or myrehab.com, and you can learn more about how you can join there. If you've been through an inpatient program with ARC or with MyRehab, you have free access to the MyRehab Cafe. You just need to send me a WhatsApp. The number's on the screen, and I'll add you. So I'm really getting into this conversation, Megan. I think it's
very interesting.
and it's going to get very interesting. So don't miss out, everybody. That's my sales pitch.
Yeah, we want to see you on the other side.
Yeah. Okay, give me a couple of minutes. I'm
Okay.
not going to play the video because I want to get back to the conversation. I'll just
Perfect.
cool.
Perfect.